And joining us right now, the great Brian Westbrook. Brian, I thought I saw you running around a lot during your career. And then here you are. You're all over the place. You got this great children's book out, man. The hustle never stops, does it?
The hustle never stops. The love of helping people, the love of being involved, being in the community never stops. And that's what this life is all about. I'm 42 years old. What am I supposed to do? Sit at home and watch TV shows and stories all day long? I gotta grind.
If you did, do you have a go-to TV show? Do you have something you like watching?
You know, I watch trash TV, so I watch reality TV, and I have no problem about it. I watch Below Deck. I watch all types of reality TV, and so I have no problem getting into it.
Oh, you're the guy that's watching the show that when I walk through the room, my wife's watching the show with everyone yelling at each other, basically.
That's it.
Life's not that.
I get so much joy out of watching it. I mean, so much joy. So I happily watch it, and I always get excited about it.
I'm always like, you're on a yacht. It can't be that bad. Everything's fine. This is wild, and I mean this. You don't stop hustling. This is the children's book that you wrote along with Leslie Van Arsdale, who's awesome, by the way. I love Leslie. This is the mouse who played football. When did this idea start? How did it start? Why write a children's book now?
Well, the idea started 2 years ago. I had a conversation with Leslie. She had some thoughts about potentially writing a book. And I said, well, I have some ideas, and she had some ideas, and we kind of combined these two ideas, well, our multiple ideas. And 2 years later, a book pops out. And really, you know, I tell people all the time, if Leslie would have came to me with this idea 20 years ago when I was 22, it would have made no sense. I would have had no frame of reference. But because now at 42 and I have 3 kids and a wife, you know, I have Bria, Brian, and Brio, 9, 5, and 3. Now that we're reading books to our children every night, and as a parent, I'm always trying to teach them things. And you know, Mark, you have kids. Sometimes the kids, they don't want to hear the story from the parents. So we can use our stories, our story time to teach these lessons. And when Leslie and I started talking about it, I'm like, this is a great message. This is a way to allow our kids to understand something that is a little bit bigger than them. And the message to me rings true. And I appreciated that. And that's why we came to the result of writing a book.
Are you using some of your own life experiences in this book that you're using to help, you know, teach kids about courage and commitment and things like that?
Well, all of my life experience. I mean, this book certainly is loosely based around some of the things that I went through, but I've always been told that I was too small. I've always been told that you're not good enough. You're not good enough. You have to go to Villanova. You know, you went to Villanova. You're not good enough to make it into the NFL. You made it into the NFL, but you'll only be a third down back. Oh, you know what? Maybe you'll be a third down back, and maybe you'll be a special teams guy. So I've heard that throughout my entire career. And the more and more people I talk to, you know, children from all ages, and then up to grown folks, we all have been said at one time or another that you're not good enough. You're not smart enough. You're not strong enough in this area. You need to do this better to even be considered. So at some point in time, we all can relate to a mouse that said that is someone has said that's not good enough. And we all have been said, you know what, here's what we expect. And when someone says this is what their expectation of you, but my expectation of myself is much higher, I don't care what anyone else says. I'm going after my expectation. And so, you know, truly one of the biggest messages in the book is it's not left up to others to determine what you're going to be able to do in life. That's left up to me, what I have on the inside of me, my heart, what I believe in, what I'm willing to work for, what I'm willing to sacrifice for, what I'm willing to dedicate myself for. I'm not concerned with anybody else's thoughts. That's just their thoughts. That's their opinion. They control that, not me. And so truly that's one of the major themes in the book. Another theme in the book is also very simple, that, you know, some people perceive my size, me going to Villanova, as a weakness. I use that as a strength. I use my size as a strength. I use my quickness as a strength. I use my time at Villanova where I learned how to pass block, where I learned how to catch the ball in the backfield, where I learned how to read defenses. I use that as a benefit, something to my strength. And so many people looked at it as a weakness. I never viewed it as a weakness. I always viewed it as a strength.
Mm-hmm. I do want to let people know that this book right here, The Mouse Who Played Football, you're going to be signing copies of it coming up this Friday at noon. You'll be down there at the Brandywine 100 Library, 1300 Fowles Road in Wilmington, Delaware. Now, you and Leslie wrote it. Now, I do have to ask who illustrated it. I just want to make sure. Can I see it here? Illustrated by Mr. Tom.
Did a great job with the book. I mean, some of these illustrations, it's weird. So as you are, you read to your daughter, your son as well. They're young, but the kids, they're visual, so they want to see it with mouse and Big Red and different things that we have inside of the book. The kids love some of the illustrations. As I read it to my kids, and of course they're looking at the pictures just like everyone else. They love the illustrations, and I think Mr. Tom, our illustrator, did an awesome job.
I want to give a hat tip to my friend Kevin Kincaid of Crossing Broad. So there's no way this isn't Andy Reid in mouse form, right? For the people on the podcast, this mouse that I'm looking at looks exactly like Andy Reid. This is Andy Reid, loosely based.
It is Andy Reid. We always thought it was important for us to have a Philly book with some things that point direct to Philadelphia. Some of the scores, some of the people. When you see the city, the landscape of the city, the skyline, those types of things. Those are important pieces. Philadelphia, for Leslie and I, is a very important city. Certainly was able to cut my teeth in Philadelphia for a very long time, and I wanted to kind of pay homage to the city in some points in this story. That's
fantastic. We'll make sure people check it out. It's it's sold out in 2 days on Amazon, if that. It's on the Barnes & Noble top 100, top 2 Barnes & Noble list. I mean, this book is just literally flying off the shelves and off the website.
Number 2 on Barnes & Noble's list, top 10 at Amazon. We've done a really good job of promoting it. But the story sells itself. One of the things that I've told so many people, Mark, and I think this is really important. One of the reasons why I wanted to do the book is because at this point in my life, obviously football is a part of my story. There's a legacy there. There's stats. You can go back and watch YouTube films, things like that. Things that I tell my kids when I wake them up in the morning, I say, hey, watch this YouTube film. This is Daddy 15 years ago, right? So I make them do that. But more importantly than that, and I know you understand this too, that you want to leave a legacy for your kids. Be a good person, go in the right direction, leave something for them. I think that's partly what this book is about. We're leaving a legacy in words with our children, not just my kids and your kids and Leslie kids, but kids around the country, right? The other thing that was super important to Leslie and I was that we give back not just our words, but also financially. So 50% of the proceeds from this book, 50% off the top, will go straight to charities, children's charities, to allow them to continue to be empowered, for allow them to continue to find the pathway to success. That was something that was super important to us because, listen, anybody can talk about it. Anybody can talk about helping kids. Anybody can talk about, I would do this if I had money. Listen, forget that. We want to make sure that our children, especially in our Philadelphia area, have the ability to be supported financially. That's why we said off the top, no matter what happens, we sell 1 million copies or we sell 1 copy. 50% of the proceeds will go directly to children's charity in Philadelphia.
That is absolutely fantastic. Has Andy Reid seen the mouse version of himself? Has he said anything about that?
I haven't. I have not. I'm actually, it's funny. My wife is sending out copies of the books today. And so Andy, of course, is on that list that I want to make sure that he gets a copy for himself and his grandkids and things like that. So I'm sure he'll have a great time. He'll notice exactly who the big red mouse is.
That looks familiar. Brian, let me ask this: from the time you retired to now, it's been a while. When you look back at how the game has changed, how has it changed from the time you decided to hang up your spikes to right now?
Well, the game has become much more specialized. You're not seeing guys that, especially on the defense side, you see pass rushers, not guys that can do both. They don't run stoppers and pass rushers. You're seeing linebackers that are just run stoppers, and on third down, they're off the field, right? You see the same thing with the defensive line. You see cornerbacks. Oh, you know what? I only play zone. I'm only a zone cornerback. I'm not a man-to-man. Oh, you know what? I'm only a press man-to-man guy. I can't play off. So the game has become much more specialized. Even on offense, you see some guys, especially at the running back position, you know what? Hey, I run the ball. I don't catch the ball out of the backfield. That's just not what I do. I do this. And so it's become more specialized there. I think the other thing that is super important to the NFL, and I think for the players as well, is that they have done a much better job and they paid a much more attention to making sure that player safety, player health is paramount. And, listen, if you want the health of these guys, you want Tom Brady to play 45 years, you want, these running backs to be able to have an extended career, same thing with every position, you got to protect these guys. That's why you're seeing some of those Guardian helmets in practice. That's why you're seeing less contact in practice that you've ever had. That's why you're also – I talked to my guy, Marc Farzetta, the Villanova head coach, and I'm like, listen, when I came to school, you were offensive line coach at the time. We had 3-a-day practices. We were hitting every single day. And now, you got, an hour and 15-minute practice. You guys are, and the same thing in the NFL. Times have changed. Not very many 2-a-days, not very much contact. The coaches have found out that they want to use sports science to make it all make sense, to make sure that at the end of the day, they have healthy players for the first game of the season. That's what they're worried about, not as much of getting the grind of football that we used to have back in the day.
Mm-hmm. So what do you make of Nick Sirianni's camp so far? Because some people are criticizing it a little too easy, but it seems to be par for the course nowadays around the NFL.
Par for the course. If you compare it to what they did when I was playing, it's much easier, right? If you compare what we were doing at the time when I was playing in the early 2000s to what they did when Harold Carmichael played, when they went to camp at the beginning of July, then we were too easy, right? So it's always getting easier, especially to the older time players like myself at this point. And so, listen, I think that as long as they can come out and are prepared to play physical football, then, it doesn't matter to me how much camp they did or how much physical activity, how many hitting and tackling to the ground that they did. If you're ready to tackle people and punch people in the mouth at the first game in September, then I think the camp is going to be successful.
What was going through your mind last year when you saw this Eagles offense go from a pass-happy offense to all of a sudden a run-first offense, something we haven't really seen in Philadelphia in quite some time? Were you thinking, man, what could I have done when this type of run-happy offense? Or were you thinking, wow, this team is just using what works?
I think I gave Nick Sirianni an awful lot of credit. Gone are the days that I even consider being able to play football anymore. I look down at my knees and my ankles, and I'm like, no, I don't even want to run up the steps anymore. I give Nick Sirianni an awful lot of credit. I mean, just think about it. Your whole career, and relatively short career because he's a young man, but your whole coaching career, you're waiting for this great opportunity for you to be the head coach. You've thought long and hard the type of offense you want, the type of coordinators you want, and now that you get this opportunity to run this offense that you've been thinking about your entire career, your quarterback's not able to perform inside of that offense. So you have to change everything to do a complete 180 to make sure that you are satisfying your quarterback and the players around him playing to his strengths. To me, that takes an awful, really good coach. I mean, an awfully good coach, a disciplined coach, a coach that says, you know what, it's not about me and my system. It's about the success of my players. I appreciate that because I was around a coaching staff, especially in San Francisco, that said, listen, we're going to run the football. I'll never forget this. Mike Singletary came in. He said, listen, first down, we're going to run the ball. Second down, we're going to run the ball. Third down, we're going to run the ball. And if it's 4th and 10 on 4th down, we're going to run the ball. And I was sitting in the back, and I was like, we are in trouble. He didn't have the ability to pivot, to change things around and go in a different direction. I give Nick Sirianni an awful lot of credit for that. I just hope in that Jalen Hurts at some point this season can find a way to be able to navigate in a bit more pass-heavy type of offense. If he can, this team is built to have success.
My feeling has been going into the season, we're going to know in the early goings, maybe the first 3 games, to know whether or not Jalen Hurts' work in the offseason will pay off when it counts the most. Do you think he has put in that work, and do you think it will pay off?
Well, I'll tell you this, Mark. I've seen Jalen Hurts a couple times in this offseason, and the only thing that he's talked about is the amount of work that he's put in. So there's no doubt in my mind that Jalen Hurts has put in the work to be successful this year. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind. When you watch Jalen and you hear him talk, when you look at his past, the grind has never been questioned. Ever, 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 not one time. The grind has never been questioned. Now, has he improved enough to be able to carry this football team the way that we all know that quarterbacks in this league have to carry football teams? We don't know the answer to that. I think I've heard people talk from practice. They said he's had some ups and downs. He's had some good days, some bad days. I want for Jalen to be consistent. I want for Jalen to be consistently good because I know the pieces that they put around him this offseason, if he's consistently good, this is a very good football team. And that's what this thing is all about. So if Jalen can find a way to be consistently good, limit the turnovers, complete a high percentage of his passes, now you're talking about a football team that's going to win 11, 12 games this season.
From the time he walked off the field last year to now starting the season, in a few weeks now, how much farther does he have to go to be a guy to get at least one more contract in Philadelphia? He'd be the starting quarterback for next year, the year after, and the year after maybe. How much farther does he have to improve? How much more does he have to improve to at least be the guy for a few more years here in Philly?
I don't remember the numbers right off the top of my head. I think he had 3,100 yards, 16 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. Let's talk about stats. We got to get those interceptions down a little bit more. And remember, there was a run-heavy offense. So we want to get those interceptions down a bit. We want to get the touchdowns up, 25 plus, right? And we want to get the yards to 4,000 plus yards. If we get to that point, you add some rushing yards in there as well, we're talking about a considerable jump for Jalen Hurts. Now, efficient passing, being able to look at that first read and say, you know what, that's not the answer. Let me go to my second read without running out of the pocket and starting to run the football. He's going to have to be able to win from the pocket. He's going to have to be able to win from outside the pocket, but throwing the football. If he can do that consistently and effectively, then again, we're talking about a team that when you add A.J. Brown, second year Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert's doing nothing but continue to get better. You talk about an offensive line that will dominate just because Jeff Stoutland's the coach. He's that good of a coach. I think Miles Sanders being in the contract year actually matters. I think he'll have a good season. And defensively, you've gotten better on every level of your defense. If you add all those things together with a quarterback that is efficient and throwing touchdowns instead of interceptions, to me, that adds up to easily the best team in the division. Now, can you be one of the better teams in the conference is a question. And once you start answering that question, it's going to come down to playoff seeding and all those other things. But this is going to be a very good football team, provided that Jalen Hurts has improved to the level that I think he has.
You mentioned the man right there I was going to ask you about next. Miles Sanders seems already like he's got a chip on his shoulder going into this season. How much will he use that as motivation to have a, for lack of a better term, a prove-it year and maybe stick around here in Philadelphia for a few more years?
We've seen it. We've seen what players do when it's contract time. You work a little bit harder. You run a little bit harder. Maybe that game where you would have set out because you were only 65%, maybe you play that week. Maybe that's the week that you say, you know what? I'm going to be hurting on Monday, but I need to play today. That changes when it's your contract year. So this season, when I'm hearing Miles Sanders say things like, I got to prove it, I got to find him, I respect, all that means is you're working harder in practice. And usually over time, when you work a little bit harder every single day in practice that you normally have, then you get better. And then in the game, you get better, right? And so from the time Miles Sanders has stepped into Philadelphia, the field there, I've said he has game-breaking speed. He has the ability to do things in space. He has the ability to affect the game. His first year, he caught 50 passes. He hasn't caught over 30 these last couple of years. He has the ability to catch the football. Now he has to get into the passing game. That means he has to find some confidence in his quarterback. And so when you talk about a guy that has that skill set, why can't he be effective? Why can't he be one of the better running backs in our conference in our league? To me, that's the expectation from Miles Sanders, and nothing less will get him closer to the contract that he's looking for than having over 1,000 yards rushing, have a bunch of touchdowns, but also playing in 14, 15, 16 games this season.
Two quick ones for you. One, it's come up a lot about Philadelphia. Your old teammate, my friend Trey Thomas, our friend Trey Thomas has talked about how Philly ain't for everybody. We could be tough on players. What was your experience like playing in front of the Philly fans?
You know, it's tough for me to even think that Philly's tough on players. I think that there's an expectation of their players, but I've always believed my expectation of myself was always going to be higher than anyone else's expectation. And my goal is to live up to that expectation. And let's say I fell short of that expectation. No one's going to know that before I do. So no matter what Marc Farzetta says and this guy and that guy, I've already heard it. I've already seen it. I'm judging myself much harder than anyone else can judge me. So when I'm hearing other stuff from other people, it doesn't even matter to me because I'm the judge. I'm the one that's going to put myself in line and say, okay, You got to be better here. You ran for 75 yards. You had another 25 yards that you didn't achieve because you don't have your eyes open. You're not looking at the hole. So, I mean, yeah, Philadelphia is tough to play for if you're not honest with yourself. But if you're completely honest with yourself, you've already heard this stuff. They're knowledgeable. They're smart enough to watch the film and say, hey, he should have cut outside, but he cut inside. They're good enough to be able to do that. I love the passion of our fans. I love that they want to hold you accountable. But to me, it was always about Brian Westbrook holding Brian Westbrook accountable. And if someone else says it, something different, then I would say, hold on, time out. You must not have watched the film correctly. I did all these things right. Now, all these other things I did bad, but you didn't talk about that. So to me, I love playing in Philadelphia because the thought was they're going to hold you accountable. That's the type of fan base that I want to play for.
You know what? You had me pegged. I was the only guy in the mid-2000s that was like, this team needs to pass more. Stop giving it to Westbrook. So, no. Last thing for you, overall expectation, number of wins. Can you give me that for this upcoming Eagles season? What are you expecting?
I think this team has the ability to win, 11, 12 games. I really do. I think, and that is provided that Jalen Hurts comes through. And I know he will. Here's the other thing that I feel about Jalen Hurts. I think that Nick Sirianni will try to pass the ball early. If it just can't figure it out, then you go back to the run, you fall back to that. And I think you can still win them. They won 9 games last year running the football without A.J. Brown, without Jordan Davis, without Nakobe Dean in the middle of the field, without James Bradbury on that side of the defense. So you mean to tell me that those collection of guys, even if Jalen Hurts is the same guy, they're not worth a game or two? To me, it's obvious that this is a double-digit win football team. Now, can they be special? Because if you talk about this team being special, if you talk about Jalen Hurts being special, now you're talking about a 12 and 13 type of win football team. That's when we start having those conversations that we really want to have here in Philadelphia.
Could not agree more. Always hustling, Brian Westbrook. Make sure you guys check him out. Also, get his book. Come on, if you got kids, this is the book to read to your kids. The Mouse Who Played Football by Brian Westbrook, of course, and Leslie Van Arsdale, illustrated by Mr. Tom. And if you guys are around Friday at noon, make sure you go down to Fowles Road in Wilmington, Delaware, 1300 Fowles Road in Wilmington, Delaware, at the Brandywine 100 Library at noon Friday, where he'll be signing copies of the book. B. West, always great catching up with you, man. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Mark. Take care, buddy.
Absolutely.